United.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Here we are on June 9th, Rehoboth Beach Planning Commission. Ask our secretary, Ms. Davis, to call the roll.
Commissioner Dewey,
Present.
Commissioner Ellison,
Here.
Commissioner Gay,
Here.
Commissioner Hunter,
Here.
Commissioner Stewart. Here. Commissioners Stockdale and Strange, I believe, are absent. Chairman Bryan
Here.
and Commissioner Davis is here.
All right. We have a quorum. Our meeting is in order. Ms. Womack, would you please provide us what information you have about the posting for this meeting as well as any correspondence?
The agenda was posted in City Hall and on the city portal on June 1st. It was amended and reposted on June 7th. The correspondence that I've received is an email from Paul Crowne, Oak Avenue, regarding hotel planning reviews, and also documentation submitted by Dr. Ramos regarding the Belhaven.
Thank you. The agenda is a bit abbreviated today. We have one item. The second item under old business is the continuation of the preliminary review of site plan review for the Belhaven property. That has, at the request of the applicant, been taken off the agenda and deferred to a later meeting. We're not yet advised of when the applicant is asked to come back, so we don't know at this point. Today's agenda will be solely for the continuation of the project concept review for the Atlantic Crowne Hotel. Are there representatives here? Please come forward. Do you have anything you need to put up on the screen?
Yeah, we have it here on our screen, but we just need to turn this one on, I think.
Yep.
Thanks for having us back. My name is Carlton Savage. Here representing the owner and civil engineer, Scaled Engineering. Today I'm here with Peyton Bridge, our architect from Davis, Bone, and Friedel. We have answered a few questions that you had from the last meeting, and I think our goal today is just to see what the next steps are and answer any additional questions you have from us as we hopefully move through this process into a more formal site plan process. So,
We received a letter from Davis, Bowen, Friedel dated April 5th, responding to some inquiries that the Planning Commission had. Do you have any update to that, or is there anything that needs to be amended or changed to that correspondence?
no, I think we answered everything you asked for. We went back through the tape and went through each question that you had, and I think gave you answers to those questions. So that was our goal with that letter.
Okay. Members of the commission?
I need to see that letter again to see, because I had a question still about the parking. But let them go ahead and present first.
Okay, go ahead with your presentation, please, sir. Will.
Okay. I mean, like I said, we're basically here to answer some of those, answer those questions that you had, or any questions you had to those questions. It was brought to our attention that the parking was something that I think there are several questions about. So we have prepared this plan that you can see above on the screen. The top rendering is from left to right is the proposed 55-unit hotel, the Atlantic Crowne. And then as you move to the right, here is the property line for the Atlantic Crowne's properties and the Atlantic Sands. This parking is for the Atlantic Sands. The Atlantic Sands building is a dashed line that you kind of see. All of this parking is underneath of that second story on the Atlantic Sands. And then the more hard defined lines here are the ground floor level of the Atlantic Sands. There is mention in the letter about the Atlantic House property. That property is part of the Atlantic Sands, but it is the rental house that we generally rent here that sits on about a lot and a half property. But as you guys are well aware, there's an entrance off of Maryland Avenue that sort of accesses this rear section. It's sort of a horseshoe that comes around and wraps around. We typically designate the parking for this house are these couple of spaces here, much like a driveway. And then most of the time, our employees in the off-season and then the busy season, these become parking for our guests. But there's 15 parking spaces that surround this area in the back. The Atlantic Sands properties kind of splits that parking that you see here. There's an electric transformer in this location, but this is sort of the behind the scenes of the Atlantic Sands. So we got our trash dumpster. Those items are back here. We do have a rear entrance on this side that accesses one of our elevators and staircase. And so there was some, and then the second view is what the underground parking would become. You have a existing ramp that comes down here underneath of the Atlantic Sands. It then wraps around, down, wraps around. And you have underground parking that extends all the way to a current wall at the Atlantic Sands property. This proposal would open up a hole in that wall to extend that underground parking for the Atlantic Crowne. So we would structurally build an underground parking garage for that, with access being from the Atlantic Sands property. We may, at the site plan level, come in with a different parking plan because we'd like to improve the flow of traffic. As you can see, some of these parking spaces here in this area could be reconfigured with a drive aisle that would kind of extend this drive aisle straight through. So that would make it a much nicer plan. So that's why we haven't necessarily submitted any parking plans, but as it currently stands, we have a positive 4 spaces with the new hotel proposal, the Atlantic Sands house, and there are 8 parking spaces, we confirmed that, for the Celebration Mall. I think there's some questions as to where the parking for Celebration Mall, where's the parking for the new hotel gonna be? And we haven't worked that out on a plan yet, per se, but the plan is right now, those 8 spaces for Celebration Mall are currently identified in the parking lot across the street. We would prefer to have the 55 parking spaces that are on the Atlantic Crowne property stay Atlantic Crowne property. That's our preference. And then we would move the 8 parking spaces to some of these adjacent parking spaces here, and we would identify those spaces. Right now we have a sign that identifies the parking. For those spaces, we would identify them. Most likely, they will most likely get reconfigured so there's parking along this wall, and those would be the spaces right now I'm thinking would be for those, or some of these spaces out front. And then the Atlantic Sands would share all the underground parking on this property and around the Atlantic House. And I could go over those numbers if you want, but based on this configuration, we believe we had 4 extra parking spaces for everything.
I do have a couple of questions about the parking. You mentioned the 8 for Celebration Mall. That's for the 4 rental units that are there, right? There are 4 rental units, 2 spaces per, correct?
Correct. There's only 4 units total.
That's what I'm saying, four
yep.
units. Okay, well, what about the office, the Realty office? Because that was given a variance for an additional 2 spaces in March of 2015, so that would be a total of 10.
Okay.
Unless it's not still an office, I don't know.
I mean, it's a commercial realty office right now.
Right.
So if that's there, I didn't find it. I think Peyton went back through.
Oh, it's there, I can send it to you if you want.
Okay.
It's definitely there.
then we might most likely would be like, +2 at this point.
Okay,
so.
yeah, and I remember you saying, well, first of all, you are gaining a lot from those spaces at the Sands house because you got a bunch of extra ones there.
Yep.
So if Celebration Mall is covered with some extras, but there's one other sticking point, and that is that it's my understanding that building license is still requiring an extra 2 spaces above the number of rooms. So that means the Crowne would need 57 and the Sands would need 180. So I don't know if you have.
And that's for the resident family, that little. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even though there isn't one.
Yeah. Things have changed.
It's still, right, yeah. I mean, and, well, actually, the commissioners are talking about changes in the code, and that's one of the things that they specifically said they're going to keep. They're just going to call it extra rather than resident family. So they've indicated a desire to keep that. And
That's fine. We will, obviously, we had enough with this plan, so if that's one of the comments, I think we have some extra space here. All of these spaces that we are showing, well, these are all existing per what was done when the Atlantic Crowne or Atlantic Sands was built. Obviously, all the new spaces meet the requirements of the 9x18.
Right, yeah.
So I don't have a problem if that is the comment, then we address it. But I think we can find a couple extra spaces. I don't think that's gonna be
It
an
looked
issue.
like you could, so, yeah, it looked like, in fact, it looked like you had just enough room.
We've eliminated quite a few rooms at the Sands over the years.
Yeah.
Rooms that don't make sense,
Right.
rooms that were first level boardwalk, we've converted them into restaurant space. So we've gone substantially less, which has generated some extra.
So is 178 the current number? Okay, well,
Absolutely,
that's where I came up with the 180 then. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
And would any of this parking around Celebration Mall or whatever other area be considered off-site parking?
I mean, the Celebration Mall property, we had approval to do the off-site parking. And I know there's requirements of distance and different things that were
Right,
discussed
but
during
does
those
any of
meetings.
that apply to what we're doing here at the Atlantic Crowne?
It will, yes.
So,
Well, the Atlantic Crowne's application, all of its parking will be on-site.
On-site.
okay.
It's the other properties, which we've already discussed, and we have a document written from our attorney that will provide an easement or some sort of blanket agreement from all the properties, so that if something gets sold, that forever goes with it. So we'll protect that with a legal document that we will absolutely submit with our site plan.
And it really would be helpful. These are very nice in terms of what's here, but there's no way to really put any context with this.
Sure.
So where is the Atlantic Sands? Where's all of this?
We
How
can-
does
we
it
can
all
definitely
relate
do
to
that.
each other?
Yeah, we'll put a color plan together or some kind of parking A1, A2, B1, B2, and that way it's very clear for the code official to review or planning and zoning at a later date.
And just to confirm again, you did not have to seek any variances from the Board of Adjustment for this project?
That is not our intent at this time.
Okay, and you have not done so far?
We have not done so.
Okay. Members of the commission?
I have a quick question, and I think I know the answer. But so the only reason we need to know about Atlantic Sands is because the way you get into the parking is through there. And are the properties have they been joined in one ownership structure, or is it the same person that owns it in different owner? How does that work?
Correct. So as it currently sits, the ownership is all one sole owner, different LLCs, but there is one sole owner of those properties. And basically that, even though they are one owner, we would still create a document between LLCs that because that could change. You could add members of an LLC, things like that could change. So, but right now, all of those lots that you see there, plus Celebration Mall, are currently owned by the same actual owner, but they are different LLC currently. The Atlantic Crowne property actually has two different ownerships similar to that, but we have already generated a plan that will be submitted with our site plan that will actually combine those lots into one.
Okay, so they'll be combined into one.
Correct.
The Atlantic Sands is already one lot from prior whatever,
Correct.
but so there, and ultimately will be two lots.
Correct. The Atlantic Sands is actually weird, and a lot of these properties in Rehoboth are deeded this way, where even though there's a lot happening on one lot and everything crosses property lines, if you actually look at the Atlantic Sands deed, it will still say lots 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 of an original plan done by, I believe it was Wingate and Eschenbach many, many years ago. There's never been any combination in the past of lots. Personally, it probably should be combined on this new application is my preference. That way you don't get in any kind of lot line discussions, or potentially you could try to sell one lot of land with half a hotel on it, so.
Yeah, with the egress and
Sure.
to the parking.
Yeah, so I think a lot of these answers will be, or a lot of these questions will be answered at the more formal site plan stage, because you will have a formal site plan in front of you.
Anyone else? Ms. Davis?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that when you get to the more formal stage, that you can provide us with a little more information concerning what we're, the so-called environmental issues in terms of where the floodplain lines are and what soil conditions and so forth. Because while this hotel is not on the boardwalk as such, it's certainly in close proximity.
Now, we intend to keep the one level of ground floor parking, just extend that level over. We've never had any water issues at the sands. We did borings already on this property to confirm that there is no issue with water tables. It's, a few feet below where we want to be, which is normal in Delaware. I won't get into elevations, but there's plenty there for this underground parking. More than that, I don't know, but right now I know this is acceptable the way we're doing it. But I will definitely, obviously that whole process is there, the floodplain, it's all parts of the code that we're gonna have to answer, and we'll take care of that.
Are loading docks an issue here?
Yeah.
So I guess I didn't harp on that too much. So if you look at the space that's right next to the building, the new building, this space here, that's currently parking. So we actually have to eliminate 12 spaces, which is still in that calculation. We are eliminating those 12 spaces, a few for the drive aisle, and this is what amounts to be a loading space, but also serves as it's also serving for the fire marshal to give some separation on the side of the building. They don't like you to park directly up next to the building, so it gives us adequate fire access. Not necessarily fire lane, they're not gonna park a fire truck here, but it gives their fire staff the ability to not have to fight around cars. They can be up with ladders and things up next to the building. So all of those spaces have been removed from our calculation currently. We do show this in the back corner of the Atlantic Sands property, the shared line with the Atlantic Crowne. This is an air ventilation system. You can't park on it currently, so we have utilized this area and removed a couple spaces currently with this plan where we'd like to share a trash dumpster because it was better access. We may even discuss at the site plan stage of just sharing trash altogether. We know that extra trash trucks and extra movements are always a pain, so if we have a trash compactor back here and trash off of Maryland, which in my opinion is a better street for the trash trucks to come off of. So we probably will consider, taking our trash to a centralized location, but to meet the code requirements, right now we are showing that we will provide a trash dumpster.
But aren't those in the setback? They look like they might be.
Yeah, it might be. We might have to address that.
Okay.
So, I mean, our preference would be probably to share the trash at some level. We're going to do a lot of shared things with it, even though it's not the same building. We're going to share a lot of the maintenance staff, a lot of the laundry staff, a lot of the housekeeping staff. Our plan is to, improve on what we have here without having to hire a whole nother team of staff for this property. That makes it much more affordable for us, makes it, makes this project work. So that's the whole reason we've done it.
You also might want to consider some hydrostatic pressure checking, some type of borings to come up with information for that.
Yep.
We're finding that's helpful for properties located on the boardwalk like this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have borings that were done by John Hines in our existing parking lot area. Obviously, we haven't dug where the two restaurant house locations, building locations, but we do have borings in that parking lot, and I've looked at them. He's looked at them as a geotechnical engineer, and I think we have 2 or 3 feet past where we want to be to the seasonal high groundwater. So we have plenty of distance here to build this without having water get into that bottom surface at all.
But you may also make sure that the boring logs are included so that the building inspector has access to that information.
Okay, perfect. Yep, it's usually all written in one big report. We'll make sure he's got a comprehensive report.
Anyone else? Wallace Montgomery, you had submitted a preliminary type report in February 10th, 2023. Anything here that you still need additional information from the applicant about? You pull your microphone down, please. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I think for the most part, the comments that we previously had are either in the process of being addressed or
Okay.
have been here.
Yeah, because we haven't seen any comments from your consultant yet. So if those are, something we could get our hands on, that would be appreciated.
One of the questions was, and actually I wanted to speak with the building inspector here about the need to enclose the restaurant within the plan. Is that?
So, yes, the restaurant has to be enclosed, including the bar area. We have a door located there, and we also have some outdoor dining. I think this is,
Enclosed.
I believe so. Yeah, we might need some barriers. And I know you guys can't, I'm sorry, I apologize, you can't see what I'm pointing at here,
If I
but
can get a little closer.
there could be some barrier requirements from the lobby to the restaurant, to the seated dining. There could be some barrier requirements
Yeah, I
for
know
that.
there is some typically from the bar, I think even from the outdoor seating component, there are some code language in there about barriers, but we have no problem with providing that if it's.
Yeah, I think at the concept level, but it's something to address, to remember to address going forward for your site plan submission.
Sure. We'll take a look at that.
The majority of our other comments mostly pertain to the parking issues, and the figure that you've shown here has certainly helped to at least give us a better understanding of the big picture concept.
Sure.
I would say. One of the things that we'll like to see is some form of perpetual easement or agreement to provide that access in perpetuity.
Absolutely.
And as others have commented here, having sort of like almost like a color-coded assignment of what parking spots go to what building and use, as much clarity as possible on that would help everyone, I think.
Yeah, I think we'll have to generate some kind of document anyway as an attachment to that agreement. So it had to be clear enough that an attorney can write that agreement and everybody understands what it is. And for the life of all of these properties, it will be written in stone as to what happens.
And then I assume that you would be putting signage there and enforcing that parking restriction.
I think the signs that are most important are the ones for Celebration Mall and the rental house that we have. As those guests are, less, they're coming in, they've got their assigned spaces. The two hotels, we could put signs on every single one of them, but I think it's more of a shared thing here. It would just be, you're obviously going to want to get as close as you can to each building. And if somebody parks way on the other side, it's still going to leave a space available. That'd be a lot of signs in the middle of a parking lot.
I think I mostly meant just those that are reserved for others.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think the other way would be a little overkill.
I'm definitely
too.
getting a sign for the resident family. That's definitely going up.
Mr. Savage, if I may, your parking associated around the building, is that a one-way around
Oh, yeah.
at the grade level? That's a one-way through there. You might want to show some directional arrows on your site plan submission to show that that is a one-way around there.
Okay. Yeah, currently, that is one thing I'll need to work with staff on is what they want to see, because obviously not only on our parking lot and our property, but the street side of things. There's spaces here. We have two entrances currently that access the parking lot. Those curb cuts can be removed. And then we'll have to generate one new curb cut for our entrance. But you should have a net positive parking count on the street as well. We do have to work with the fire marshal. He may want something access or something, one or two spaces to provide access to the building, but I think right now, without having that submission into him, I think you're going to be positive on the street as well.
And Mr. Savage will include in our non-binding written comments that the Planning Commission is obligated to give you as a result of this concept review. We'll share with you the Wallace-Montgomery document dated February 10, 2023, their initial report, so that you can look at that and see if there's anything you need to address.
Is there a way, I know you guys are in the middle of designing a new streetscape on Baltimore. I know those plans, I don't know what level they're in, but at least can we get a copy of that if we ask staff to, as we're, doing our plan for the on-street parking side of things? Is that something?
I'm not familiar with what stage that is in from drafting. I don't know if it's just in a discussion level.
Sure.
So I'd have to defer to Mr. Janis.
Thank you, Chair. I believe we are still in the preliminary working. Obviously, there is construction proposed at the end of that street. That's moving more robustly than I think the streetscape is, and I think it would be wise for obviously to us to incorporate all of these projects into one. So if we have anything that we can share, we certainly will.
Yep, I'll just work with staff to coordinate that, and I just don't want to show you something that you guys go, that's absolutely not what we're planning on doing, so.
Oh, you mean like there's no street there?
Well, that could happen, I guess. Do we get ownership back to the center line? Is that how it'll work? 'Cause I can do the plans for us. We can.
Any other member of the commission? Yes, sir.
Just one further quick question about the service bay that is shared with fire access. Is the fire marshal approved that plan?
So that is very similar. There was a previous application for a smaller hotel. That was what we were proposing at that time as well. And that was what was approved. There was an approved plan for that. So I'm assuming that, the fire regulations have not changed enough that would not be acceptable now.
But I assume that you'll find that out for sure.
Correct. So it's not as I was mentioning, it's not a fire lane. It would be there's fire lanes, and then there's which is providing fire apparatus access, and then there's actually perimeter access. That perimeter access, I think we may even achieve it more with this plan, but we honestly didn't want people parking up against the side of that building because there will be most likely I think it's a 50% need for fire perimeter access with sprinklers. So we'll have a fire marshal approval that confirms that. Yep.
Anyone else? All right, sir. City code provides that the planning commission takes no action to approve or deny your concept or any details at this level. We are, however, bound to give you non-binding written comments and suggestions based on the experience, knowledge, technical assistance, and public comments of this commission. Do you have anything further in your application?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone from the public wish to address this?
Sam Cooper, I live at 13 Newcastle Street, and just two things. One, and obviously it's a very preliminary stage, but I would think it would behoove the commission to get a full report on the house and the status of it on Maryland Avenue. It's in an R2 zone. My sense is there's history on that, but I might be speaking out of turn or something, but it's been the subject of other negotiations or whatever, because again, it is an R2. I'm not sure that the parking there is grandfathered as part of the whole project, so just that. And the second is, one of my concerns as I saw this in the press and stuff was, and the gentleman from the engineering firm addressed that, as the cross easements or whatever. How does the city ensure that there's always access to this parking underground? And I think the cross easements sound good, but when you have one owner who owns both entities, what keeps them from, I don't care how perpetual it is, if there's two parties and they can agree, they can pretty much achieve anything unless there's a cross easement also given to the city or somebody who would have to step in and say, yeah, okay, we understand now, and we'll give up our part of it.
That's a good thought, sir. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. I think we have concluded our concept review on this particular application, and we'll be in touch with the applicant soon.
Are we going to talk about moving it to preliminary?
Before we end our deliberations, is there any thought about moving this to the preliminary site plan review process?
I'd be happy to make a motion to that effect.
Right. Just want to make sure that anybody object at this point. Do I have a motion to move it to preliminary site plan review?
second?
Ms. Hunter? Yes,
I so move or I second. I thought it had been moved.
okay. I need a second, please.
Second.
All right. Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we'll see you in the preliminary site plan process. Thank you very much.
And I guess that might not be next month because it might take Matt longer.
Oh, that's right, it will. All right, well, as a reward for all the hard work you've done, we can go home early. We're adjourned. Thank you.
That was hardly worth hair and makeup.